The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. Welcome to another D-Link webinar. With myself, as always, is our pre-sales engineer, Craig Kirby.
Hello, everyone.
Introduce Craig early because we've got a lot to talk about today. Today we are going to be going through the new Eagle Pro. I call it range. We could call it an ecosystem. There's a number of things in there, but it really is the beginning of a whole new system of mesh products that work together for D-Link.
Right.
So it's a very exciting launch for us to go through. And as you can see, they dance. Please don't expect any of these you buy. They are AI, but they're not that clever that they can actually dance as the ones on the screen are now. So thanks to everybody for joining. As usual, any questions, pop them in the sidebar, and we'll get to the questions at the end of the webinar. We've got quite a few slides, but we will whiz through them. Some of them we have seen before, but we think it's always good to give people a reminder as to the power of Wi-Fi 6.
That's right.
By going through why Wi-Fi 6 is so great at the end. And we'll whiz through those slides and get to any questions that come up as per usual. But I'm sure that me and Craig can do such a great job that there won't be many questions for this one. So we're pitching Eagle Pro as a versatile solution to eliminating Wi-Fi black spots. And that's because the whole system is kind of interchangeable within itself. There's three real ways to make sure that you get proper home connectivity, proper coverage, eliminate all the black spots in your house. The first of those is to go wired. We love wires. We are D-Link. It's our hypothesis here. Wire it up if you can. But as we know with wires, it can get a little bit expensive. It can get a little bit problematic with how far away you are from a router, but we always stick with use a wire if you can.
Yeah, that's right. But that's the thing, Alan. The technology is progressing so far ahead now, and there's so many devices. It's not really reasonable to wire up an entire house. So yes, we have to rely on wireless sometimes.
Yes, yeah. Traditional extenders. Now, just to make sure here, we are talking about traditional extenders and not mesh extenders. Traditional extenders, or power lines, as they're sometimes known, they are an option, but they are a lower performing option than a mesh extender or the next option we're going to look at.
Yeah.
So the best place to push these is to say that these are the least expensive option, and they'll probably give you the lowest performance.
Yeah, some of these things, they can be standard agnostic as well, which basically means they're not really requiring so much on a particular vendor. So let's say you've got a really old router and you don't mind about cross brands. What you could potentially do is have an extender. But what that really is it's either repeating off your current signal, which might not be great in the first place, or it's trying to kind of daisy chain things in an environment it's just a little bit old. It's not that these are not out there anymore. It's just that with mesh technology, what we'll be looking at today, that's the future.
It's just a much more efficient technology. The average extender can cut the network's performance by up to half. Mesh, on the other hand, and we're talking about mesh networks, and we're talking about mesh nodes, and we're talking about mesh extenders, and we're talking about mesh routers. We're kind of encompassing the whole thing just under the guise of mesh networks. And how we pitch mesh is that it's the perfect balance between the two. So you've got the wired, and the next best alternative is to go for the mesh. So we've wired up the router, we've wired up our sound system, but then the rest of the house, we probably don't want to run cables all the way across. So a mesh network would be absolutely ideal there. But if you do have, let's say you have an entertainment system in your lounge, and then you have another one in the bedroom, but attach a 5-port switch to your mesh node, because it's always got a gigabit LAN port on the back or whatever it's got, and then you can wire up again in another room, and that's one way to save you from running all that expensive cabling everywhere. So a good sort of middle ground solution there. I think.
Absolutely.
So what is mesh? And in the case here, I've used the illustration of the mesh nodes, but this could also stand for just the mesh router with the extenders. One of the products in your house has to be the gateway, has to be the main router. So in this case, it's one of these nodes. So let's say, for instance, the main node that we set up here is the node in the living area. And then the other two nodes are set up as extensions of your network around the house from that main node.
That's right. No, normally you would put that router module next to where your internet's coming in the house, maybe. But that's not always the best place for coverage, is to have that there. Sometimes you'll have to. So the idea being that you'll have these kind of satellite devices around where they'll talk to each other and then broadcast out to accept clients.
Sure. We could replace that main node with a router, the Eagle Pro R15 in this case. Yeah. And then in the kitchen, we could have an extender. And then in the bedroom, we could have another extender. But I just think in this case, in this living scenario, the mesh nodes are probably a little bit better because they just look a little bit cooler. And that's the only reason that I picked them. They kind of blend in a little bit better than the router with its spiky aerials. And then
not everybody likes that.
Not everybody likes that.
Fortunately, sometimes they do serve a purpose with those big spiky aerials. And what that means is that you do generally get better coverage.
Yes, I love my six antennaed router. I'm not changing him. But again, the main point to take away from mesh, and the main reason that mesh outperforms the traditional extender or power line options that we talked about previously, is it's one network and it shares a single SSID. And there's all sorts of technologies as you roam around your lovely modern space home here, called smart beaming and beam focus, or however other people call it, that will connect you to the node that's going to provide you with the best performance. So as you move from the front room into the kitchen, you will switch from the front room node to the kitchen node. And when you go up to bed as well, you'll switch to the bedroom node.
And this is where it's different between a mesh system and one of those traditional systems that we were talking about, extenders, a moment ago. The technology and the handover and how it operates between each other and the clients, it's more seamless. Devices these days, they don't really understand that they're actually going from one network to another. They think they're on the same network, and that's what meshing is. It's very different to that standard trade-off of just pushing a device off and letting it fend for itself to find the nearest access point.
Yeah, and you avoid that awful time when you're in your lounge, you're on a call with the boss, working from home, as we often are. You walk into your bedroom to get away from the litter pickup that's going outside. So the big lorry that picks your litter up has just turned up. So you go to the bedroom to get away from that noise, and you lose signal because you switch between the router in the room and your power line extender in the bedroom. So you've lost the call. So you have to go back on. And then with mesh, that problem is completely eliminated. Our friend the snail, he's here to illustrate that there are multiple things that are slowing down your network at the moment, and mesh is brilliant at overcoming these sort of options, because rather than just having one router that's broadcasting to your whole your whole property, you've now got either a router and two extenders or 3 mesh nodes or something similar to that. So you have amplifications of the signal throughout. So that kind of takes out a lot of the some of the issues that these sort of things will cause. So physical obstructions. So if you've got a wall in the way, heavily insulated walls are a bit of a problem. I know Craig's had some problems with some walls in the past.
Certainly do, still do, unfortunately, but that's the way it is. That goes back to that having mesh inside. Yes. And when I say mesh, I'm almost like a chicken wire that they put on holding plaster on the wall.
Sure.
And if you're unlucky enough to be in a building like that, unfortunately, it acts like a Faraday cage, which means that you're going to have root problems with the signal getting through for a traditional network.
Yeah. So mesh it up. Mesh up the mesh.
Yes.
Again, distance. And distance is something that is kind of solved by having 3 repeaters or 3 nodes around your house, or 2 nodes if you have a smaller device. It's true of many houses is that the internet will come in by the phone port, and you know, people have different shapes and sizes of house. So if it's in the hallway and the hallway is central to the house, that's probably the best sort of solution for a single router. But if your router is in the front, the lounge, the front room, and it's right at the back of the house, and that has to power the bedroom at the front of the house, you're going to have a lot of pieces, a lot of items, a lot of distance, physical distance between those two. So that's where a mesh system could really help you out there. And there's also interference with baby monitors, microwaves, cordless phones, etc., etc. And the other thing to consider is other Wi-Fi networks. The interference of other Wi-Fi networks on your Wi-Fi network can disrupt the signal. We will talk about BSS coloring a little bit later on, because that's something that's been added to Wi-Fi 6 to help alleviate that problem. Again, another problem which can be solved by investing in mesh. Okay. So as we were talking about earlier, here's your house. They've got quite a lot of internet coverage for a little room there. They've got roots around a mesh and extend it all in the same room, but maybe
well, there should be no excuses for getting decent Wi-Fi there.
So there's the ecosystem sat in there, and the lady is using the app down the front. We'll talk about the app a little bit more later on. Craig was using the app earlier, and he was quite impressed with how fluid it was. Some of the things that the app can do for you, and some of the things that Eagle Pro will do for you, mainly related to the AI here. So you've got the new level of parental controls, which we'll touch on in a little bit more depth in a slide later on. You've got the AI Mesh Optimiser, which kind of takes away the need for you to look at how to optimize the network traffic, and does all that kind of stuff for you. So it learns from your usage for how to best optimize the mesh around your network.
So how it works is there are 3 nodes, and obviously if you have more devices, they communicate with each other in the background. And what they do is they actually create a wireless bridge, like a tunnel between each other, that you're pushing that traffic through. So what that does is it actually tries to look at the environment and tries to find the best way of creating that bridge, so that you only have to worry about your device connecting to the nearest node, because the nodes, the other actual meshing systems have already done that part of trying to figure out how best to communicate with each other.
Sure. It's far too smart. You've got the Wi-Fi optimizer. So we talked a little bit previously about the beamforming. It kind of relates back into what Craig was just saying about the Mesh Optimiser. But this is the Wi-Fi optimizer to make sure that you're always on the best channel. So as you roam, smart roaming was a previous feature. It's kind of like smart roaming with AI. Then I should
so they use a form of so in the past what we've had a business access point product which uses smart beaming. And what it does is it actually throws the power out in a certain way when it knows that there's clients on the edge.
Sure.
So what they've done is they've taken that kind of technology and now it knows where the nodes are. So it doesn't have to worry about the clients, just where the nodes are. So it kind of throws that signal out a little bit more powered in that area, so you can get a better bridge, that actual locking mechanism between the meshes themselves.
Cool. AI Traffic Optimiser. We will go into quality of service a little bit later on.
Yeah.
But this is smart quality of service with AI, and it's kind of taking quality of service to the next level by adding artificial intelligence to your own setup. So very exciting. Yes. Quality of service, as you know, is something that me and Craig both love. We love to talk about.
It is. And the thing with quality service in the past, Alan, is that it's so difficult to implement.
That's exactly what I was going to say. We've tried our best to spread the gospel of quality of service, but there's still people out there unconverted. So.
That's right. I mean, if you ever worked with a business router, you'll know that it's all about rules and making sure the right rule is in the right place. Now, when it comes to consumer devices, we don't want that kind of, we want the business logic. We want it to work the same way, as good as a business product if we can. But we can't have that complexity because not everybody understands networking and things like that. And that's no good. If you have a device that does something, but you don't know how to implement it, then it's as good as not having it.
Of course. And that's what we try and do at Dealing. We're trying to get everyone to know more and see. It looks complicated, but actually setting up quality service is relatively easy once you know how. But that's like so many things, isn't it, in life? Not me. WPA3 security, the latest in security, alongside Wi-Fi 6. Don't need to go into that too much, but you can ensure that your home network has the highest standard of security available. And then Mumimo and OFDMA. Again, we've got a couple of slides on those a little bit later on, but just know that they are the things that make Wi-Fi 6 super quick, higher throughput, higher, better signals. It's the things that power Wi-Fi 6 to be better than previous versions of Wi-Fi 5, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. We're going to look at the individual products that make up the Eagle Pro family, and then we'll have a sneak peek of what's coming next. Everything that you see for the the first 3 slides that you see now are available. The E15 will be on Amazon very, very shortly. It will be appearing on Amazon any day now. We'll touch on that in a second. But first product is the AX1500 Smart Router, the R15. Fairly standard sort of stats there. We don't have to talk about that too much. It's got the 3 gigabit LAN ports on the back, so get yourself a little 5-port switch if you want to really wire any more items up. So this would be the gateway into your Eagle Pro ecosystem if you were going down the route of having a router and an extenders, or if you rather than you could potentially buy 2 sets of mesh and combine the two sets of mesh, or you could buy a router and then you could connect up the 3 meshes to it. So this is the beautiful part about this this whole system, and Craig's going to touch on that a little bit later on with all the different modes that you can use to set up.
There's a little bit of complexity, so it is a good idea to kind of get an understanding of all of the products that we have in the market, because it's going to be a mix and match for some people, and it's going to be something else for someone else, depending on the size of or how you're spread out around the house, or where people are using things. Now, how I see this router being used is putting it in and seeing if it generates enough of a broadcast for the whole house. And then maybe if it doesn't quite get into some areas, then you could look at having an extender with this device to just try and fill in the void of where you're having an issue.
So everything we've talked about is incorporated in the router. All of the features we talked about, the AI Parent Control. Next on the list, we've got the mesh systems. So the mesh systems, they're known as the M15, and they come in either a 2 or a 3 pack. So as previously, we've kind of discussed the mesh systems, putting them around your house. The 2 pack is perfectly adequate for a home measuring up to about 370 square meters. The 3 pack will go up to 500 square meters. But if your home is smaller than that, but it's an odd shape, or it's over 3 floors, for instance, I would recommend you go for the 3 mesh node version, just to be better safe than sorry, because the stairways, the walls, the floors will block off part of the Wi-Fi system. So
that's right.
Depending on the size of the shape of your house, and for a 3-story, we really do recommend the 3 node version.
And going back to what we said a little bit earlier, you've got some flexibility with this meshing system, because what you can do is one of these devices can act as a router. We'll go into that a little bit later. One of these devices can act as a router, and 2 of them can act as satellite viewed. So we'll have a look at that in a bit more.
And lastly, the E15 mesh range extender. This is so exciting for D-Link, because since I've been at D-Link, we haven't had a mesh extender.
Since I've been at D-Link as well, and I've been there a little bit longer.
Since Craig has been at D-Link, so this is great news for us. And if I had £1 for every person who asked me for a mesh extender, then I could probably retire, or I could at least buy a mesh extender for myself. I'll take either. So this is very exciting for us. And the beauty of the mesh extender is it is literally just a plug socket. So you can hide it behind a sofa if you don't want to be able to see it, but also that portability. So to be able to put this in a garage, a high traffic area, not have a cable extending, not worry about catching the cable and pulling the router off of the side of something. Put it in a summer house. This is absolutely perfect for somebody who has a lovely mesh system in their home and they want to build an office to work from. Get yourself one of these, plug this in, extend the network out of your main building down to the bottom of the garden with one of these mesh extenders. Absolutely perfect. Will do a great job for you.
So how this fits in is think of where you're going to be broadcasting the router from, or that main part, and think about where you actually want to be using the Wi-Fi. This can fit somewhere in that middle path in between. Now, I don't know about you, Alan, but when I've had problems with my Wi-Fi at home, when I've talked about that big problems with the walls.
Sure.
So I have a living room and I have a hallway and then I have a bedroom connected to it. Now, I can imagine putting this in my hallway to improve my bedroom scenario.
Perfect.
So that I can actually use Wi-Fi in the bedroom there, so that I can go in there, watch a movie and things like that. So perfect. Finally, I will have decent Wi-Fi in my house without running cables.
Quality of service. Okay, just jump into going back over quality of service.
Yes, absolutely.
Craig loves these slides.
I do, because I made them. It took a long time.
He made them. Yeah. So we promised a quick example of quality of service here. We think this slide is the best way to kind of illustrate that, and you can see this unordered traffic here. Which
so we've used this scenario where we have we have voice traffic that's going through a network, and that would be the red car, and you can see the red car is kind of being slowed down by the traffic that's in front of it. That's kind of a crude way of how congestion works on a network. Now, what we want to do really is we want to use quality of service to try and define what parts of our traffic are more important than other parts. That's what quality of service means. Now, when you think about voice or maybe streaming a TV show, what that actually is that's moving packets back and, well, when I say back and forward, it's just streaming. It's constantly sending signal again and again and again. Now, if you drop a packet in that scenario, you don't want to try and get it back, right? So you just want to forget about it and move on. You just want to keep moving on all the time. And that's why it's slightly different for voice traffic, because think about a telephone conversation, it's real time, right? So if you lose a packet, you just got to move on. So it's really important that that happens quickly and effectively without getting slowed back by it. And we want to make sure that doesn't happen. So quality of service, when it's turned on, means that we can say, okay, voice traffic, you go in that lane. I want you to be the highest priority. And only...
Look how fast it is.
Very fast. So that basically means only voice traffic is that prioritize over other traffic. And then you have other things which might be just general stream. It might be emails and things like that. Going back, might be checking web pages. That could be medium traffic. And then maybe you'll have like backups or something that's happening across the network at night time or something like that. Maybe you're doing some updates to your machines and things like that, and you're doing big downloads, but you don't want that to affect the rest of your traffic or the other users on the network as well, because it's not necessarily the type of traffic. It can be PCs, so you can say, well, I want that PC to be higher quality than that PC. That's what quality service is.
And the AI side of the quality of service is that it will do some of this stuff for you automatically. So, for instance, with AI quality of service, email and file transfers will be lower than obviously the streaming traffic, which is kind of what we want, isn't it? It's what we want to kind of maintain, because your VoIP calls, you really want those to be the most important. Your work laptop, all that kind of stuff. So
that's right.
Smooth traffic flow achieved. AI parental control. I did touch on this earlier. We saw this was one of the new features. So as previously, parental control has been part of our EXO routers before, the Wi-Fi 6 routers we had last time. But this kind of takes takes parental controls slightly higher to a higher level, helps you keep it managed, and does a few things. So setting up profiles, and we can see a few profiles here for different people. So you can pause people's internet access. You can stop people from being on the internet between certain times. So if you're worried about your children accessing the internet overnight, you can switch the internet off, but for that person between, let's say, 10 o'clock at night and 6 o'clock the next morning. So there's all sorts of schedules and all sorts of bits you can do. And as we touched on earlier, playing with the app, it's pretty easy to do, fairly intuitively designed, and definitely a great addition, and a more powerful addition than the previous versions of Parental Control.
Yeah.
AI Assistant. So basically, this is going to help you know who, what, why, when, and where is using your internet. So if for instance, you've got children and you've said to your son that he's to limit his internet usage and not spend so much time on Facebook.
Do your homework first.
Do your homework before. AI Assistant is basically going to rat him out. So AI Assistant is going to monitor usage and provide you basically a weekly report summarizing who did what, did when, did where, and a series of recommendations. So it'll tell you how much traffic you've used, when it might have been better to use that traffic, when it would have been the optimum time. So you're going to get a very useful weekly report that might get a few people into a little bit of trouble. All powered by the app there. You can see some clear shots of the app there, how everything is spaced out. Very neat and tidy there. So as I said, Craig and myself played with the app a little bit earlier, and it's good looking and very, very easy to use.
Yeah, very, very intuitive. I think the designers have done a good job in getting that across, making it really easy to click, and it doesn't matter what size thumbs you have, you'll be fine with this one.
Yeah. That is the consideration. So now, replace your old router. This is a slide that I've been through before. So I'm going to I'm going to run through this in a very top level method, and then Craig is going to iterate to some of the improvements that Eagle Pro brings to the ecosystem, some of the different options that you have to set up your mesh nodes or your router after this initial run through, because we're asked a lot here about how to replace my router. What if I've got a combined modem and router? What do I do then? And the number of questions that we get, the number of people who write comments on Amazon where they haven't set up particularly the second example. So if you've got a combined modem and router, it's probably the most common problem we get on Amazon. Yeah. So people are broadcasting two signals, a double NAT, because they haven't disabled the router function on their combined modem and router.
That's right.
So the top version is the version that I have at home, because I have a separate modem and router. So the internet comes in and it goes into the modem, and all the modem does is basically translate the internet into a readable signal for the router. So the router then is removed. I've cancelled the router, and the router has been replaced by the first mesh node, and this mesh node is now my router.
That's working as a router with a firewall system as well.
Perfect. Yes. And any one of the three in the box, or any one of the two?
No, it will come when you open the box. It will actually come with a sticker and have the little number 1 with an orange sticker on it.
I apologise. That's different from the cover system. Then. Okay.
The cover triple pack, I think, used to have that as well.
I
used to have one. I
had the 2-pack. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So good information. Glad we've got Craig here. So you'll have a model that's labelled up as number 1, and then that will connect to the modem and then to the mesh nodes. Please note that the connections aren't wired, they're just simply red lines.
That's right. Okay.
So it's wired between your modem and the mesh, the mesh node that is the router,
it's a
but
wireless
the other two are wirelessly
bridged.
Yes. Okay. In the second example, if you've got a slightly more modern router from somebody like Sky, ISP, something like that,
or some of the business routers even.
Business routers, you will have a combined unit, and the internet comes into that, and that's pretty much it. But what if that's a wireless end? What if it's a wireless AC, and you really want the latest Wi-Fi 6 as we're offering with Eagle Pro? Disable the NAT. So if you notice there, the router part disappeared, and it's now just a modem. So we've set this in, we've disabled the NAT, we've put it into modem only mode or bridge mode. So 3 different terms that different people know, different mythologies of doing that too. So instead, the modem will now plug into the router. So in this case, it's the Eagle Pro R15. And then the R15 will, once again, these aren't wires, these are just a wireless bridge between the router and the 2 extenders.
That's right. Yeah. Now, here's the thing, Alan.
Sure.
You're not always going to be able to do that depending on the router that you've got. Okay?
Yes.
So where we would love to be able to disable the NAT, that's not always an option. So what we've done is we've got a way around having that. Okay? So you still have your modem, you still have it in router mode. Okay? But what we can do, which we'll show you on the next slide, there's a couple of different ways of doing it. We'll get in somewhere. Okay. So let's go with our traditional of how it comes out of the box. We have our internet, and it goes to the device that you've got plugged in. Sorry. So that's going to be like an ADSL or VDSL modem, and then that plug into the device, and then that transfers out. Now, that's working as a router, firewall operating, quality of service, everything that's happening on that first device, and then that will connect back to your other 3 nodes, or maybe you've just got that one device that's operating. That could be the R15 router. Okay.
Yep.
Second mode will be extender mode. So as we said before, it's not always possible to turn off that NAT mode. Okay. Sure. So if you have a router, it's currently existing, maybe it's from your ISP, but you don't really, you want to expand out from it. We'll keep that cabled connection between the internet and the existing router. And then what you can do is you can, in this case, it probably would have to be an R15 that you replace that existing router with, but then the other nodes can operate as satellites around.
Right.
And that's going to be, so in this case scenario, okay, probably not your ISP is going to be that existing router, probably going to be an R15. Sure. And maybe that first node might even be one of the 3-pack.
Sure. Okay. Yep.
Lastly, and this will be relevant to if you can't turn it off, is that you keep your existing router as it is. That's from the ISP. And then what you do is you physically plug in a cabled version to that first node. Okay. Now again, it could be R15 or it could be your M15. Okay, that number 1 device from the M15. That will then allow you to start building your wireless network. And what you generally want to do is you want to keep it as a different SSID to what's broadcasting on that already current one. Because really, what you don't want to do is you don't want that clashing of the channels. Because they are 2 different networks. They're broadcasting out to 2 different networks. Yeah. Whereas when you have a mesh device, the whole idea is you have one SSID, but they work together. So that working together piece is really important.
Sure.
Okay.
Good options. Good options to have, because it's been a problem for a few people, hasn't it, over time, depending on.
It has, and unfortunately, I think from what I've seen of the ISPs, they did originally bring out modems and routers that you could turn into put in bridge mode, and it's less and less common these days. So we do have to find a way around it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if they could be more generous and give away decent routers, and then if they came to us, maybe we could have a chat. Coming soon. I promised a quick look at a couple of new products that are coming. The first of which is the AX3200 mesh system. So again, both in 2-pack and 3-pack form. Slightly different form factor to the cube shapes of the M15. These are more either cylindrical or rectangular as you look. Slightly bigger units, and that's because they're slightly more powerful units. So this is going to be great for anybody who wants some extra power over and above the AX1500, which is it's a fair speed for most houses, and it'll do most houses fine, especially if you've got I don't know, 70 or 80 coming in, but this is going to provide just a little bit more speed.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's really good for those high density environments. When we say high density, we're kind of talking about families, really. I mean, you think how many devices kids might have, or friends coming
iPad,
over.
PS5.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a lot of devices. So having that, if you have a really good internet connection coming in, and there's a lot of people that got fiber these days.
Yeah, of course.
And sometimes it's fiber direct to the house as well.
It's spreading, and
it is. And when we're talking about gigabit connections now that potentially come into people's houses, so you want to make use of that as best you can.
I'm waiting for my gigabit connection. Now these are interesting. These are the first mesh 4G products that D-Link is going to be producing. So for all the people who are a little bit unlucky when it comes to a fixed line ISP, if they don't have super fast connection to the house, if they live a long way from the local exchange, then they can find that their speeds are severely reduced. Now, 4G gets a bit of a bum rap, and Craig can attest to this personally, that 4G can very often, even in areas where you do have a nice normal fiber connection of about 80 meg, 4G can still outperform that at its peak. But 4G for households where the ISP isn't so great is a fantastic solution. And now we'll be producing a range of mesh routers. So this will be the gateway into your mesh network. So we have two AX1500 routers coming. One is Cat4 and one is Cat6. We won't go into a great deal of detail as to the categories, but Cat6 will perform slightly higher than the Cat4 router.
Yeah, I think it's 300 megabits per second as opposed to 150 megabits per second.
Perfect. So 300 megabits per second is slightly faster than my home broadband connection. So as you can imagine, so these are a great alternative, and this is the first time. So these will plug into your replace your modem and router, or if you don't have one, these will become your modem and router built into one. So you can set these up, and then you can have a range of extenders, or you can plug in a range of mesh nodes, whichever one fits your purposes, fits your solution better. So very exciting stuff, and we're looking forward to these coming out because we think these are going to be pretty good products. So
yeah, and obviously they're mesh devices, and they work with the other devices.
That's it.
As well.
Yep.
So expanding your Wi-Fi,
extend it out,
and then utilizing that massive throughput that you get from a good 4G connection if you're in an area. Likewise, ADSL is probably 15 megabits per second on a good day. VDSL services probably around that 55 megabits per second mark. It can go higher. It's just that generally the packages that you get from the ISP are around that area, and that's really down to not that it can't physically do it. Just it's more about making sure everybody's got connectivity. Sure. So kind of leapfrogging over to 4G, or maybe using a bit of both, because you can have two connections in one's failover. So bearing in mind, you can use this with an ADSL or VDSL connection coming into the house, or any kind of Ethernet connection coming in that you can do, and then have a 4G as a backup if you need to.
And I didn't want to preempt, but somebody has already asked the question: when are these coming in 5G? we'll answer that at the end, but it's not going to. We don't really know as yet, but we'd love to get them in 5G. But let's get the 4G versions first, because these aren't out yet. So let's get these versions first, and then let's look for 5G down the line. So as I said at the start, we've been through a lot, so we're going to do a quick run through of Wi-Fi 6, why Wi-Fi 6 is so great, and where we've come from. So way back in 1997, there was the first version of Wi-Fi, right the way through to the most recent iterations, where you had the two versions of AC, so Wave 1 AC and then Wave 2 AC, and as we always love to talk about MoMeMo, the introduction of MoMeMo back in 2015 was a real groundbreaker. But Wi-Fi 6 really just takes every previous iteration of Wi-Fi and just improves on it in every way that it can. It is a real significant leap forward.
Yeah, and I think what's really important here is if you look at this timeline, the thing to gather is that that 2.4 gigahertz spectrum has really been neglected since sort of like 2009.
Yes. Yeah.
So for the first time, 2.4 gigahertz has been enhanced with multi-user MIMO and some other different kinds of technology in there, which we'll go into a little bit of it. I don't want to bore everybody, of course, but that means that you're now broadcasting at a decent distance, because 5G naturally does go less distance than 2.4 gigahertz. So having something 4 gigahertz and an improvement, that's really good.
Yeah, and we haven't put 6E in because, and it's not because we don't have any Wi-Fi 6E products out yet. It's just because it is kind of it is still kind of newish. I know that maybe some people have got out to the market, but the standards and all that kind of stuff, they're not really cemented into place as yet. So we'll wait a little bit, and we'll talk about 6E when 6E becomes a little bit more adopted and a viable kind of alternative that doesn't cost the earth. Because if you look for a 6E product at the moment, it's silly, because it's not worth all the extra money you have to pay. OFDMA?
Yes. Oh,
Craig.
You're going to make me say it, aren't you? Orthogonal frequency division multiplexing. That's the old way of doing it. Yeah, the old one. The new one is orthogonal frequency division multiple access, which we'll come to in a little bit.
Perfect.
Okay. I don't want to jump the gun. So what we're talking about is the packet structure itself and how much data we can deliver per header. That's the really technical way of doing it. What that means is more data in a packet that's condensed, and we can sort of shuffle that around a bit better.
Yeah, and the trucks demonstrate this very well. So you've got the Wi-Fi 5 here, where you've got 3 different trucks delivering the 3 different packets at 3 different times. But then in Wi-Fi 6, when we change around and we've upgraded to OFDMA, I'm not going to do what Craig did and pronounce it again, because we've only got 10 minutes left of the webinar. But you can see there that the new model, the truck is carrying all 3 packets at the same time. And as a bit of a gamer myself, anything that can improve latency, I'm on board.
Yes,
I am so on board with. So OFDMA is really about delivering more data in a timely fashion and shaving milliseconds off of that latency for gamers and other people who take advantage of that.
Yeah, and certainly we go back to that VoIP traffic and streaming traffic as well. Yeah, that's where it really improves.
Whoa. Improved speed. We've touched on movie modes so many times so far, but it's just an unavoidable part of the conversation, isn't it? So
it does. Yeah, we'll try and go quick on it. Ultimately, means in the past, when an access point or some wireless device tried to serve everybody, it would serve one client at a time. Yes. Multi-user MIMO. What that means is it serves multiple people at the same time, so nobody has to wait for each other, and it doesn't create more congestion on the network.
That's perfectly it. So more people using more devices and a better speed across the piece for each of them. So one of the best parts about Wave 2 Wi-Fi, that Wi-Fi 6 added to the 2.4 gigahertz spectrums are now even better on Wi-Fi 6. Throughput. Throughput is basically improved by a big increase in the quadrature amplitude modulation.
Yes, we won't go into it so much. I don't think it's for today to discuss this. All that means is you get better speeds and high capacity.
Yes.
Let's leave it at that.
Yeah, so 25% more throughput with Wi-Fi 6 due to the 1024 QAM will do, as opposed to Wi-Fi 5. So perfectly worth having. One of the things that is a bigger it's a bigger example for businesses is target wait time, because target wait time is brilliant for shutting off devices when devices aren't being used. So in the home, it's not so vital, but upgrading to Wi-Fi 6, you will notice, or you may notice a slight increase in the battery life for
so if you've got a new mobile phone
Yes.
that's running with a Wi-Fi 6 chip, what that basically means is there's negotiation that happens about when they talk to each other on the network. And if they don't have to talk to each other, they don't. And that's where the battery is saved.
Yeah, so on the first one, the routers or the access points asking who's next. They're all coming for the signal at the same time. But what target wait time is, target wait time puts the Wi-Fi to sleep on those certain devices and just powers up the one that is next in line and needs the signal most. So preserving, very good for businesses. You will notice slight improvements at home, but not as much as these big companies with these robotic arms and presses and long assembly lines and stuff like that. We touched on BSS coloring. BSS coloring is the system in Wi-Fi 6 that allows that takes away some of the Wi-Fi congestion, takes away some of the interference that comes from Wi-Fi signals. So basically, your router injects a color into your signal that allows your devices to pick up that color, allows signals to overlap without so much interference between them. As the presentation says, it's called color collision. So embedding into the data packet and allows the device to ignore any other color signals, as it were. So one of the good things about Wi-Fi 6 that is very prominent in blocks of flats, where I don't know about Craig, but I go on my system and I can pick up about 15 different Wi-Fi networks from the blocks in my flat, the flats opposite. I've got about 15 different options on there, so all probably interfere with mine, except I've got Wi-Fi 6 at home, so
that's right. Yeah, well, that's how it comes down to bandwidth and how many devices are running on the same frequency. That's really what we're talking about here. It's a way of the device ignoring other areas that are in that space. And it just drops the packet quickly and gets on with what it needs to do.
Perfect. That is the last slide. So we got through that very quickly.
Oh, that was good.
Very quickly. A couple of questions. I do apologise to the guy who asked the 5G question. We don't have an answer as to when we'll have a Mesh 5G product. We do have 5G products out in the marketplace at the moment. We've got a Wi-Fi hotspot, the DWR2101, which is a great little unit. And then we have a DWR978, which is more of a router kind of device, so a bit bigger, something that you probably want to put in your pocket and walk around with. It's a fairly chunky device, but they're both very, very good, both very, very capable of high speeds, but they're not mesh. But I'm fairly sure that the next iteration will be mesh. One more question that has been asked is potential. You showed the new mesh systems upcoming. What about potential models for routers and extenders? So that is the plan. That is the plan.
Yes, and we'll be honest with you. It's been a tough time for everybody. It's been a really tough time, and what we're going through right now is a shortage of chipsets. Getting hold of transistors, getting hold of the everything, just the whole technology that goes behind these things. And unfortunately, it just means that things are going to be delayed a little.
Sure.
We're happy that we've got what we've got at this point. It's a nice new launch, and it does mean that things where we would progress a little bit faster are going to be a little bit slower over the next year. But we'll get there. We'll get there.
The one thing that we don't want to do, let's say, for instance, that we launch the two 4G routers that we showed you earlier. The one thing we don't want to do is launch and have 100 of them available. We need to launch and we need to have available to fit the demand of the marketplace. So we know that they're going to sell pretty well. So we don't want to launch that and a higher powered router and the lower powered router and take away potential chipsets that could have gone into the 4G routers. Now, I'm not saying they're the same chipsets, but all I'm saying is let's make sure that we get these out. Let's make sure that we've got enough to fit the demand, to fit the marketplace, and then we'll launch more going forwards. But I've seen the plans for a higher powered router, so something towards the 3,000 AX range, and I've seen a lower powered router, so an Eagle Pro that would sit in the Wi-Fi AC range as being announced. I've seen higher power extenders and other stuff, but we're not at the stage to show those. We were lucky enough to be able to show you the 4 new products come in today. They're planned in for H2. So watch this space. I'm sure that we'll send out some more emails or some social messaging around them when they come closer to launch. But unfortunately, I can't. We're not in a position to show any of the other stuff that's upcoming because it's a little bit further down the line. And as Craig so rightly put, it's not the best situation for us at the moment when it comes to procuring chipsets and all those other things in the market. But we'll do our best, and we'll get these products out to you as soon as we can. So yeah, so it's a great range to start with. There's a lot to absorb there.
Absolutely.
So, and some really great mesh options that we're going to have available through the rest of this year. So Eagle Pro is here to stay. That's about it for the questions. So if anybody's got anything else, we've got a couple more minutes before we jump off. I'll just start doing the outro. Oh, a quick question here from a fellow Alan. Thanks, Alan. Can you explain the basic difference between the M15 and E15? Why would I use the latter? Also, I know none of the units have external antennas as compared to the router. What's the implication of that, if any, on performance? Great question.
Okay, so let's handle the antenna part first.
Yes.
Okay, so what these antennas are is they're omnidirectional broadcasts, right? So directional broadcast means it goes one way and it tries to go that way. Okay. Now I mentioned in the webinar we do have some technologies called smart beaming. Okay, and that means that we try and shape the broadcast by adjusting the power levels. So when you adjust higher power, what it means is it's more like a funnel. It pushes it out slightly different. Think of it like a ball, right? And changing that ball into an oval so that it goes farther, but it's less wide. Okay, perfect. That's the kind of rude way of saying it. Crude way of saying it. Now with these omnidirectional antennas, when you have a router, what you're able to do is you're able to move them, right? You're able to wiggle them.
Yep.
And what that means is you're adjusting that sphere of influence, how it goes out. So if you was to have a big router, or maybe you're trying to get away with having, maybe you're in a smaller apartment, maybe like a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom or something like that, and or maybe where your internet comes in, it's more centralized. Maybe you can get away with having one router with these adjustable antennas to cover everything, and you won't need any kind of other meshing.
I can with the
with your one that you're using.
It's got 6 antennas. It's very powerful.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why you would use that in that scenario. So you do want to kind of start with that if you can.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, if you know that there's no way that's going to happen.
Sure.
Right. There's no way that's going to cover what you've got because you've got big vast, or you've got big thick walls, or you have problems like I do where it's not going to be about trying to broadcast it. Yeah, you've got to get that. Yeah, you have to be more maneuverable with it, right? So I personally, in my scenario, would go with the 3 meshing system, where I would have a small broadcast in my living room, and then because I've got my hallway, which has got my adjoining bedroom off it, I'm going to put one of those small things in that hallway so that I can broadcast out to my bedroom. It's kind of like an angle,
Because no matter how powerful the antennas are, they're not going to get through the mesh.
They're not going to get through it. They're absolutely not going to get through it.
I like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's why you would kind of. It's not about why would I go for. Well, it is. It's about why would it go for one. What's better for your environment, and doing it that way.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah. See, my explanation was always I like the extender because I always think of the extender as being something that I'd put in a garage, something that I'd put in a summer house, something that I'd put in that. But I can get away with the DIR 5460, which has got the 6 antennas, and my bedroom is at the furthest point away from my lounge where the internet comes in, but I get perfect 1080p streaming 4K, well, 1080p because my bedroom TV is only 1080p, streaming from Netflix on there. But what you got to remember is that DIR X5460 is £180. The R15 router is £60. The extender will be about £40.
Yeah.
So for £80 less, you can have, okay, it's a slightly less powered router with 4 antennas, but you can also put that extender in the bedroom if you have some of the problems, like Craig has said. I don't have those problems. The signal gets through to my bedroom, no issues. So you can do that, and you can save £80. I mean, win-win.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Alan's just come back and he's just said, I'm asking as I have a 3-floor house and use a DDR882 with Ethernet over mains today. So that's a power line, basically.
Right, okay, power line adapter.
So that having the mesh, I would suggest with a three-story house, that I always suggest the mesh.
Yeah.
You've got 3 stories, put a mesh on each floor, and that is going to give you massive improvements, especially as the power line at its very best will cut your performance in half off your DDR882. Good choice of router though. The DDR82 was solid router.
It was, yeah.
But obviously we here at D-Link, we look at that as like, my gosh, it's 3 years old. Oh my God. But we're in the privileged position of being here and seeing all of this stuff.
Yeah,
so,
but that's the thing. You can
router.
keep that router. You don't have to replace it for an R15.
That's the point.
Because what we've
Yes.
just seen is
Yes.
that we can have this bridge mode where we can still run off that and then have a mesh network on top of that device if you wanted to.
For instance, if Alan wanted to, he could leave the DDR882 on his ground floor. Let's say the internet's coming in there. Could he put a mesh point on floor 2 and floor 3?
He could, but you'd have
up?
to remember that the signal themselves would almost be acting like 2 independent networks.
Right.
So probably what you would want to do is you might want to turn off the Wi-Fi of the current one he's got, and have an extender there. So that would be the first one. So the number one that might be a router would now not be running as a router. It would be running just simply as a
modem.
A device.
Device. Yeah. Perfect. Brilliant. Finish up then. Thanks a lot to everyone for joining. Good to see good numbers again as usual. This will go up on YouTube in the next day or so when I get the transcoding done. Don't forget to follow us, eu.dlink.com. You can see all the new products on there. Alan, yes, drop us an email. The email is on screen. Actually, I'll give you my email address rather than going to the sales email address. I'll just drop it in there before we go, because the sales box is the salespeople get very excited when an email comes into the sales box and they think it's a lead. So I'll drop you my email. But for anybody else who wants to get anything about these products, UKI-sales@dlink.com. Or give us a call on 0208 955 9000. Go on the website. We've got a live chat. You can chat with our friendly sales guy who's constantly monitoring on there. He'll put any questions through to me or Craig. And that's it. So we'll probably be back. Craig is off on a well-earned holiday for a couple of weeks. Yes. We're looking at coming back in middle April to do a Nucleus Connect webinar, talking about how our smart switches have been upgraded to Nucleus Connect. So a slight change of pace from today, back onto more of a business tip. But everybody is welcome to join as usual. So thanks a lot for your time, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, everybody.